What's going on, Workforce and Soul Nation? This is Brian. I'm going to be posting this video both on Work to Game and my personal channel because I think it is both informational and educational, and that's one of the things we strive to do on the internet. It sucks when politics come into games. I think games should be about games, and traditionally that rule holds to be true. There are some rare exceptions, and this post is not going to lean real political at all. In fact, it's going to do something a little bit different. Ultimately, Mark Kern here is something that kicks off a catalyst, something that we talked about in a couple of videos here on the channel, talking about the future of gaming, as well as basically how MTX has really impacted the industry. And while there's nothing wrong with microtransactions, there is something wrong with microtransactions. And so if you guys are interested, be sure to check out those two videos. I'll include links in the description below. Ultimately, Mark Kern here puts out a Twitter thread, and there's some information that he shares in it, and I just want to educate you on what is being said online. I'm not making any political statements here. I'm literally just hopefully sharing this information so that if you haven't seen it, you can be aware of it, and you can choose to do what you will with that information. But from here, we're also going to dive into something that PC Gamer has been researching, and it's essentially how much China actually owns of the video game industry and more. So buckle up, or if you're new here, I chuckle occasionally to myself, so let's chuckle up and do this thing. So Mark Kern writes, "This hurts, but until Blizzard reverses their decision on the BlizzChung HS, I am giving up playing Classic WoW, which I helped make and helped convince Blizzard to relaunch. There will be no Mark of Kern Guild. After all, let me explain why I'm boycotting Blizzard. I'm ethnically Chinese. I was born in Taiwan and I lived in Hong Kong for a time, but I have done business with China for many years in several gaming companies there. So I think I have a valid perspective here, having been on a team leader at Blizzard and having grown up in Asia. I have watched China slowly take over as the dominant investing force in gaming and movies over the years. It's a shame US companies have never believed so strongly as China and Asia has as investing in games, but this allowed China to have unprecedented influence over our media. Chinese game companies have grown huge, not just in market size, but because the government subsidizes them. They get free land, free offices, and huge infusions of cash. This cash was and is used to explain to buy up stakes in US gaming companies. I've seen the first-hand corruption of the Chinese gaming companies, and I was removed from the company I founded after Blizzard for refusing to take $2 million kickback bribe to the investment from China. This is the first time I've ever spoken about it publicly. I've also seen how American company reps in China have been offered similar bribes to get licenses for large AAA titles. Not everyone refused like I did. Chinese companies try to ruin my career with planted stories, and money is often paid for favorable press in China, and some of that money flows here to the US as well. Unfortunately, money talks. China has succeeded in infiltrating all levels of tech and gaming and more. Unfortunately, the US and European companies are loath to take risks and invest in game companies legally as much as China was. China remained one of the few places mid-tier studios could get funding. So again, China's influence grew, and I'm sure that this is the same for movies as well. But now we have a situation where unlimited communist money dictates our American values. We censor our games for China. We censor our movies for China. Now game companies are silencing voices of freedom and democracy. China is dictating to the world be authoritarian. And that's essentially the story that's actually going on. That's ultimately what is being said here. Now he goes on, and if you guys want to read this thread, I'll include a link in the description below. But why this is so important is it talked about China's been purchasing various game companies. Let's talk about this PC gaming article right now. Every game company that Tencent has invested in, and Tencent, is one of the biggest publishers for games in China, and they do a lot. Now, it's not just them, because we're going to go into a couple more articles here as well. But essentially, Tencent is the world's largest game publisher. It's both the internet entertainment giant in China, and it's equivalent to Facebook or Google, if that's how this article is phrasing it and comparing it. But with over 300 investments in its portfolio, staying on top of every company that Tencent has taken a stake in can be daunting. And so this is this author here, and make sure I'll include the link in the below for Steven. Be sure to go click this link, give it some love, and give it some read time. Riot Games, League of Legends, no surprise, it's owned 100% by China, and essentially this was purchased 93% of it back in 2011 for $400 million, and 7% later for essentially an undisclosed amount. So I don't know how much that 7% went, but obviously it's paid off. Tencent purchased right in games, nothing short of precedent. The League of Legends is the most popular PC game pulling in an estimate of $1.4 billion in revenue just last year alone. It's not the biggest game on this list here, mind you, because this is, I think, found really interesting. Epic Games, 48.4%. And so we've seen this, and this is what we've been talking about here on the channel, especially as it relates to microtransactions. I even stated that China's influence has been something that gamers are frustrated about, even if they don't understand why they're frustrated about it. Like, why are games monetized the way they are? Let's take a look at Epic. They invested $330 million into Epic Games back in June 2012, and this triggered one of the most dramatic shifts in PC gaming over the last decade. So there's been positive moves, mind you. The Epic program, Unreal Engine, that went to where you could use it for free. I've been able to use it. You didn't have to pay all this money up front to use Unreal. You got into this kind of subscription or revenue share service. That was really a smart move, but everything's shifting to that games as a service model, and that ushered in obviously what we now know for Fortnite, which made $2.4 billion last year, making it the most profitable game last year. That's a huge amount. Bluehole, they own both. They own stake in both, 11.5%. So they own a lot of Fortnite. They own a lot. I mean, 11% I still would say is a lot for PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. In fact, they are actually technically competing with themselves, because at the end of the day, they have the publishing rights to both in China, and that's a good position to be in when you're your own competition. Ubisoft, they own 5%. This has kind of helped them stave off essentially a hostile takeover from Venvidi, if anybody remembers that, several years ago. And so they were able to buy. It doesn't look like, though, they actually have a voting rights within Ubisoft, but they've got their fingers there as well. Activision Blizzard should be no surprise. Another 5%, again, with Venvidi controls way back in 2007. Activision Blizzard did this in a way to stave it off. Now, obviously, being able to benefit from the enormous success of World of Warcraft, and 5 years later, they merged companies of Activision and Blizzard to buy back Venvidi's stake in the company and become independent, and Tencent jumped in on the opportunity and bought 5% for an undisclosed amount. I'd love to know what that was. Grinding Gear Games, Path of Exile, 80%. Now, a lot of people feared this back in the day when this actually happened, fearing that Path of Exile would go and really try to be greedy. It does not appear like that has happened at the time of this video and the time of this writing, but I just, sharing it's fascinating, 80%. Other investments worth noting, Supercell, they own 84.3%, dyslexia kicked in there, and Tencent invested $8.6 billion into this Finnish mobile developer. They own Frontier Developers, 9%. They invested 17.7 million euros for that. Or if I don't understand that symbol, then I apologize. Kako, 13.5%. Paradox Interactive, 5%. Fat Shark, 36%. Funcom, 29%, SharkMob, 100%, and what was really surprising here is Discord. Now, they invested $158 million in funding last year, including an undisclosed amount from Tencent and many other developers. So that isn't saying that China is an investor, or Tencent has invested $158 million specifically, but Tencent is among its developers. In fact, some people have criticized Discord as being, just as the information that they collect. They don't want to use it because, as a part of the free service, Discord's getting your information, they're getting your data, etc. So I'm making no official, policy or statements here. I just want to share this information as to what they own. Now, it's no secret that Activision and Blizzard here have stakes in China. This is very clear, very obvious, very straightforward when you look at it, and that's basically they have a partnership with Tencent, and so. I honestly, at the end of the day, they are in a lose-lose situation. It's kind of, they've ended up getting looped in here, and I think there's a lot that we can talk about. I'm sure Chris is going to talk about it in probably a very unpopular video, but when he kind of separates like what is the legal versus the moral arguments here. And that's what essentially this is talking about. Now, ultimately, I do want to kind of point out that it's not just Tencent. We know this from last year. Bungie got $100 million from NetEase. This is another Chinese company to develop new IPs, and they want to expand past Destiny. So Tencent is essentially the focus here of the PC game article here, but that's not to say that they're the only factor. And we talk again about this as a part of the future, about India coming online, the future of cloud gaming. I really hope you check out those videos. They did not perform well in terms of videos, and I understand, An opinion's an opinion, but what we're really looking at here is just the overall fundamental investment that these companies are making into it. And you might not be aware, but I think maybe there is a chance that why you're frustrated about games and game monetization and how everything's shaking down is because of this globalness business. And there have been benefits. We cannot sit here and say that they aren't. We can sit here and say we don't like it, and we can feel very small against a $100 billion industry. And that's perfectly acceptable to do. And anybody who feels like they need to do and take action and boycott and things like that, they, I support them. I'm not as optimistic, because one of the things that as gamers, right or wrong, we are very passionate about this, and hype is a hell of a drug, and that's ultimately where we're going to see where this goes. So we'll keep following this story. We're going to keep talking about the story, and yeah, I think it's important because again, like, we look at ourselves as an education channel, and I just wanted to give you guys this information about what is being said online and let you guys make the decision, and whatever decision is right for you and makes sense for you. So that's pretty much the crux of it. Again, I'll include links to all these these threads in the description below, so you can go and give them a read for yourself if you are inclined to do so. If you guys want to have a conversation about this and any of this in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Let's just remember to try to keep it respectful and honest, because we're all fans of games, and this is a complex issue. This is a this is a landmine that, by following their policy, Bungie tripped basically every landmine and got caught up in, obviously, a global sense, a bigger story. And I think Chris will talk about that with the NBA and more in another video. Anyway, for Ginger Prime, for the workforce, for Work to Game, my name is Brian. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have an incredible day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.